Hello and welcome yet again to Author's Voice, a book signing network. I am your host, Betsy Bird of LadyBird and Friends, and today I am very, very pleased because we have yet another wonderful guest. Who knew? How lucky is that? Seems to happen every single time I'm here. It's amazing. So today we are talking about a young adult book, which I don't usually do, but I'm going to actually do it this time. And what a young adult book it is. Here it is. It is The Nerdy and the Dirty, put out by Henry Holt for a lovely, lovely $18, which you can actually buy here today. You can purchase it yourself. If you just scroll down on your little screen there, you can see there's a little order book button. You just press that little thing. You can order yourself a signed book to yourself. How cool is that? So my guest today is, oddly enough, the author of this book. Yes, T Gottfred. Am I pronouncing the last name correctly?
Yes, perfectly.
Am I?
Yep.
Am I?
Yep.
You are being kind. I suspect I'm doing completely
perfect
wrong.
job. Most people try to add an I in there, but
I was going to say Freed.
There's no I.
Yeah, there is, but it is funny because your name has been spelled in a handwriting-like manner. So I was glancing at it just to make sure it was right, and I was like, oh, shoot, is that an R or an S?
No, you got it.
I'm going to go with R on that one. So, yes, you are my guest here today. And if you guys are watching and you think to yourself, oh, why isn't she asking him this question? Well, you can do it your own darn self. We actually have a Submit a Question button, which if you are watching this, you will notice it is right underneath the screen. Press that little Submit a Question, submit said question. I will live read your question, but say your name. Because sometimes we get these anonymous questions, and that's fine, but isn't it kind of cool to hear your name, hear somebody read your name? You should submit your name. It's awesome. So, sir, for you.
Yes.
Okay. So, first of all, you have no website, which makes researching you
I do, actually. Yes, yeah, btgottfred.com.
Okay.
Just redid it.
Just-
Got it made it all fancy now a couple months ago. So
there you go. Okay,
it's
that's
it's
good
out
because
there.
I found your Instagram and I found your Twitter.
Yeah.
And I had a harder time. So good because on here it does not say.
It's not on there.
Your website anywhere, and it has the shortest. Actually, could you read your own biography aloud?
Sure.
Sir.
Yes.
I'm going to assume you wrote that.
B.T. Gottfred is an author, playwright. Wait. Can we talk about you instead? It would really have to be telepathically. Thanks. Go ahead. Really? That's awesome. You're awesome. Back to my bio and director. This is his second novel, I think.
See, I knew that would go much better if you did it as opposed to me doing it.
No, you're very animated. I respect that greatly.
I have that going for me.
No,
yes, I am awake.
You're a natural.
Thank you. That's very sweet. Well, this is your second book.
My second book.
Yes.
Yes.
And it has a great title.
Thank you.
Nerdy
Thank you.
and the Dirty, which is a soft rhyme, I'm going to say. And so my question to you is, what is said book about?
What is said book about? Well, the reason people become authors is so they can write 70,000 words about something and not have to sum it up in
I find they hate doing that.
20 words.
They hate
but
it.
I will do it anyways.
I know.
All right?
I'm going to make it.
So it is about Penelope and Benedict. Penelope is popular and passionate, but very internal with her voice. Nobody knows how intense she is sensually, as I'll say. And then Benedict is one of the top students in the school, but very socially awkward. And they have nothing in common until they're kind of find themselves stuck at a kind of winter resort in northern Wisconsin. I grew up in the Chicago area, so I said everything around the Chicago area. So Riverbend is a loose interpretation of kind of the Glenview area.
Oh, I see.
And so, yeah, that is what. And so then, once they're at this resort, they realize they have more in common than they realized. So, yeah.
Nicely summed.
And I alternate between the first person of Benedict's character and the first person of Penelope's character. And so, and many people ask me, how do you write teenage girls so well? And I say, well, half of me is still a teenage girl. So,
You're eating up my questions yourself, sir. That's not allowed. But yeah, so the book's been getting lovely reviews.
Yes.
According to the back of it, it's gotten a starred review from Booklist right here. They managed to
We've
get that
gotten
in time.
4-starred reviews, which has been very
Four
nice.
starred
Four,
reviews?
yeah, that's nice. It's not
That's
many books
super.
get that. Yeah.
No. I would say, when they actually will calculate the stars sometimes and show like the top ones, and 4, not so common. So congratulations to you. One thing that the reviews really like and mention quite a lot is the sex. Of which there is some in this book.
A lot.
In that the
Even more
title
than
is
some.
The Nerdy and the Dirty, and there is prominent underwear on the cover as well. This is a sex-positive book for teen girls. I mean, it's not just for teen girls. Guys obviously are going to get a lot out of this too. But it has a sex-positive teen girl character in it.
Yes.
Which is, I don't read a ton of YA, but I read enough to know that that is not the most common thing. First of all, the sex, not that common. And then, well, I mean, it's in books, but it's becoming more common. But certainly girls who actually enjoy it and aren't punished by, say, their car falling off a cliff, right. Which is a very, I know, it's a very 1950s trope. I apologize. But come on, in the modern version of that. It's still rarer than it used to be. But so what has been, like, first of all, how do you write... and you already said it to a certain extent, so I'm just going to rehash the question you already answered. But, dude, how do you write a girl thinking about sex who's a teen, which you ain't?
There's I suppose 2 parts to that. So I have a greater theory that deep down we're all frozen children at certain ages, right? All of us probably have a 5, 6, 7-year-old trapped inside of us. All of us have a teenager trapped inside of us. And then probably various key moments of our life as adults. So I have access to that teenage self that I employ in my daily life. As far as the voices themselves, I also believe artists, in general, I believe all of humanity is going this place. We're all kind of looking out for that balance of 50-50 masculine, feminine. Artists have to do that very naturally because we have to be able to represent all sides. But the greater political discussion is where I think we're going as a universe, is a very 50-50 masculine, feminine world. So, all that being said, what happens is I have voices that start talking to me in my head, and there's dozens of them right now, and eventually a couple voices will say, hey, you better tell our story or we're going to drive you insane. So what I start doing is going, okay, what voices would be in the right book together? And usually my first book, I did the same thing, alternate between the 2 characters. My 3rd book, which comes out a year from now, alternate between 2 characters. And those characters were always like, all right, we're definitely in the same book together. With Benedict and Penelope, they were very distinct and very loud at the same time, but I never thought that, for the years that they had been kind of jostling around my brain, that they'd end up in the same book. But then they're like, no, we're going to be in the same book. We're going to see what happens. And so then I let them loose upon the page. I had no idea what was going to happen any more than someone reading it until I got to the end. So,
oh, you don't outline.
I give a generic outline to people that demand such things, and then I quickly I tell them it will be tossed aside, because as soon as the characters say that's a stupid choice, Brad, I listen to my characters. So.
That is a good way of going about it. Now, you're also a playwright.
I'm also a playwright.
Now, when do you decide to put characters into a book versus a play?
Well, the playwright kind of stemmed. So, I've written one play called, 2 plays, but the one that toured for 5 years is called Women Are Crazy Because Men Are Assholes. And we started in Los Angeles, then went to Chicago, then back to Los Angeles, and then to New York. And that actually, I started as a screenwriter, movie maker out in Los Angeles. And that was a script that nobody wanted to make into a movie. And I'm like, I need to tell these people's stories and the character stories. So I'm like, well, I can make a play for very little money, where movies cost a lot of money. And so I started a 60-seat theater, and by the end, we were playing at 300-seat theaters. So it was nice.
Very nice.
Yeah.
So you wrote these plays, and you went from playwright to young adult novelist.
Yes. I mean, so in many ways, I moved out to Los Angeles. To make movies, right? And so I spent my first 10, 12 years trying to make movies, made 2 small movies no one will ever heard of unless you Google them, One's pretty good, one's pretty bad, but I'm proud of both of them. They're still my children.
You won't say which is which.
They're still my children. And then in my kind of early to mid 30s, I realized I just was not satisfied with kind of with how my career was going for both financial reasons and creative reasons. And so the nice part about books and plays is you have a lot more control over both how creatively it comes out and financially it comes out. There's still very little money in both of those, but I liked the control more than I liked the potential money of that. Now, that being all said, the book and the play led me back to, because I had some fans, led me back to where I got hired to do this big digital series for Verizon last fall, which comes out in a couple months, called The Boonies. So my world is circled back to writing and directing digital stuff as I'm doing my books. So.
But you've never written a book for adults.
I have never written a book for adults that's been published.
Oh, there you go.
Like us all, we have books in our drawers.
In that drawer.
Yeah, but that is not very good. So
okay.
No.
All right. So now the first book that you wrote, Forever for a Year.
Yeah.
Yes. Forever for a Year, and so that was a young adult book. So why did it end up being YA? Was it originally YA?
The Forever for a Year was. So I had a editor friend who had seen my play and who had read some of my work in novel-ish activities and said, why don't you take all this great character stuff you did in your play and apply it to YA? And the reason you choose YA is because, again, going back to that, we all have 16 years old inside of us. I think everybody in this room and everybody watching, no matter how old you are, still has all the emotions that ricochet inside of our brains and our hearts that we did as a teenager, but we've learned over the years to contain it or control it in a positive sense or repress it in a negative sense. But the teenagers don't control or repress it nearly as well. And so it's fun to see them living these things outside of their minds and hearts, unlike adults who kind of have it deep down.
So have you gotten any teen responses to this book yet?
Sure, I've gotten a lot of people have responded. Typically, I tell people you can go read a couple chapters for free anywhere, and you will either love the voices and love being inside the people's teenage mind, or you will realize, oh my gosh, I do not want to be inside of it. Because as I say, most people write either from the third person or first person that's like almost borderlines with the what I call intellectual melancholy of most books. I would say 90% of novels are written with intellectual melancholy. Which is great. I'm not disparaging it. It's just what most books and most people enjoy. My book is written with a very visceral first-person stream of consciousness stuff. And so people who do not like the stream of consciousness of kind of a Catcher in the Rye type experience, you're not going to like my book. But if you like those type of books and really love to be like in the minds of somebody, then you're going to like my books.
Okay. Well, let's get back to the sex. Because I managed to stop not talking about it for like a really long time. So the first book had it.
Yeah.
And the second book has it.
Yeah. And my third book has it.
And your third, is it? Oh.
Yeah, a year from now. Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's my later question.
All right,
we can't get out of order, otherwise I'm all thrown off. So, what do you see as, okay, so when you are writing a book and it has sex in it, there must be some part of your brain that's like some parent somewhere is just, or gatekeeper or what have you, is going to have a problem with this book. Or is that little voice nowhere in your brain whatsoever?
Well, I sure for lots of books that's not one of their main goals is to deal with intimacy. Sure, they shouldn't have a book about a war in space and then like throw in a gratuitous sex scene, because there's just people are reading that for this space war and not for the gratuitous sex. And gratuitous, I hope it's not gratuitous. So but it is, there's a lot of it, but I hope it's all very meaningful. The main what caused me to write this stuff is if you allow your child to have unsupervised access to the internet, they are way beyond what you could possibly read in this book. So I always say, what books can do, which no other medium can do, is give context and really context and consequences to choices, and help the reader understand what's going through their bodies and through their minds as these things happen. Where you can watch all sorts of things online, whether it's real pornography or things like Game of Thrones, or even TV shows that are meant for teenagers that don't give any context or consequences in a kind of intimate way. And that's what books can do in a magical way.
Very nice. That was sort of tying in. I was going to ask you what you thought the role of the sex in the books is. You already covered that. That's fine. How does an editor edit you? Like, have you had the same editor for both of your books?
Yes.
Okay.
Kate Farrell at Henry Holt, who's amazing. So she fell in love with the voices of my characters, and so in that sense, she's very loyal to those voices. And for my first 2 books, certainly her main goal is always to remove stuff that doesn't come across as authentic, which is my main goal. And so for the first 2 books, it was pretty smooth sailing. Our 3rd book, we're having a little more battles. It's a extremely ambitious book thematically. So and she's right to be more diligent on certain issues. So.
All right, that's good. Oh, reader mail. All right, from completely random people who we don't even know who these came from. Here's my first question. How much did your mother influence your writing?
Well, it's funny you ask. So I had 2 parents, like most of us. My dad is a massive reader of newspapers and all such things, but has probably read a dozen books in his life, where my mother was the opposite. She read a book when I was growing up. It felt like one a day. And so she influenced me to the kind of power. She's a speech pathologist, and one of the things she talks about is the power of language in our own brains. We often talk about communicating with other people, but in my opinion, and my mother's and other people, the language that we have in our own brains helps us understand cause and effect for all things we do, all the dreams we want to do, all the small choices we make, so forth. And the thing that helps that enhance that internal language more than any other thing is reading. And so that probably is the main influence my mom had. You know.
Good answer.
Yeah.
That's a good mom-related answer. This next one may be, I don't want to say this is my favorite question I've ever received, but in the top 10, it would be in the top 10. Okay. It could be I'm going to say number 7 in the top 10. Should your nephew Tommy read the book? Now, this seems to assume quite a lot.
Yes, it does.
What if he doesn't have a nephew,
yes,
Tommy?
Well, Tommy, I believe, is 11 or 12. I'm trying to...
Oh, he's going to read this
So
book.
I would say if Tommy has unsupervised access to the internet, I would say he's probably ready for this book. And that's, and so that's
I think that's the level.
That's a big question.
The bar.
Yeah.
If or no.
Because if he has, the kids will look, especially boys, will look at all that's available. And parents want to pretend that they're not looking, that, oh, my boy won't look at such things. He's unaware of such things, but they look.
I can relate very directly to this. I grew up with an aunt who wrote Harlequin romance novels. Wow. So which I, of course, her loving niece, would read. And I learned so much. So much. And you can learn things too. What have you had to cut out? I know you talked about your editor cutting out things that seemed inauthentic in the writing. Yeah. Even before it got to your editor, though, in the drafts that you did, surely there was stuff that you cut out.
I mean, because I'm so loyal to my voices, I have a hard, like a lot of people, we have this ongoing, I think writers are either, they write plots that reveal character or character that reveal plots, right? And one of my best writer friends that we've done little mini tours together, she's a plot person that reveals character, and I'm a character person that reveals plot, and so we have this ongoing discussion. So she gets through her first drafts super fast because it's just plot, and she's outlined it and done all the meticulous disciplined things that plot people do. Me, I'm character-based, so if I'm writing, my characters are telling me what to do, but if I lose confidence in my ability kind of to be channeling these voices, I stop dead. Like I can't, it's the classic writer's block, and so I have to wait. And so the things I cut out are really just I stop writing before I write a whole chunk that I would cut out. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Because I see myself going down a path that feels inauthentic, and I don't stop believing it, and so and if I don't believe it, my readers will never believe it. So that's where I kind of, all the stuff that's left out is left out before I write it out.
Okay, but following up on that, how often do you have writer's block? How often do you go down the wrong path, you stop, and then you're like, I can't?
Well, so what would be my fourth book that I'm writing now? I'm trying to write more plots into it. It's a little science fiction-y, with still my very strong voices driven. So it's a lot harder to have voice-driven stuff, which you're also trying to have this kind of tight classic plot situation. And so it's been brutal, absolutely brutal. Yeah.
Excellent. Glad to hear it. All right. So you mentioned before the first one was definitely always YA. Was this always YA?
Yeah. So I had the first book deal, and then we had a great experience. So there was a 2 more book deal on top of it. They all take place at the same high school, and so the characters Caroline and Trevor make a tiny appearance in this book, and then all 4 of those characters make slightly bigger appearances in my third book.
Oh, that's right.
You do not have to read one book in one order. They are totally independent. It's much more like the universe of this high school. It's about these characters, not about the other characters that make little cameos. It's more the fun aspect of kind of, cool. Oh look, he was in the first book, that sort of thing. Yeah.
And would you ever have any inclination to write for a younger age?
Well, I've written some children's books, hired illustrators, done them all up, and then realized that they really should be called children's books for adults, since mine were very adult themed. But I'm kind of waiting. Like at some point, my editor, Kate at Henry Holt, does do children's books, and I kind of like, when we're done with my third book, maybe I'll hand them to her, because I'm super proud of them. But they're definitely, because now I have 2 small children, which I read books all the time, and I'm like, these books aren't for 3-year-olds. They're for like 30-year-olds trying to deal with their 3-year-olds.
They can workshop with the kids. Yeah. And no, okay, well, hey, picture books possibly.
Yeah.
So you mentioned this mysterious third book, which is not science fiction. That's the fourth book.
No.
What is the third book about?
This will be like my first public reveal of the
title.
title.
Well,
all
right.
Exciting.
We have an exclusive.
It is. It's called The Handsome Girl and Her Beautiful Boy.
Nice.
And you can tell the themes and issues that I will be dealing with in it. And again, I alternate between my 2 main characters, Z, my tomboy main female character, and Art, my very sensitive, beautiful, outlandish boy character, and as they kind of get to know each other in all sorts of ways.
All right. Is he a manic pixie dream boy?
It's funny you say that. My best friend, one of my best writers friends, who you just mentioned, Gretchen McNeil, just wrote a book called "I'm Not Your Manic Pixie Dream Girl."
Yeah.
It's no.
Okay.
No, I both my kids. The reason I alternate between both characters is because they both have their own arcs. So
okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's fair.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think I ran out of all my questions.
Very good.
Unless you have any more nephews
that
waiting in
are
the wings,
waiting- that are waiting
then you're
in-
going to have questions like loved
Okay.
it you had. I think we are pretty much good to go. But I need to remind some people about what exactly, in case you're joining us late, what we're talking about. We're talking about the book The Nerdy and the Dirty by T Gottfred, which I said correctly twice in a row.
Well done.
Yes, and as I may have mentioned before, this is published by Henry Holt, and it is about $18, so you can certainly get one of that. Let's just do one quick thing before we sign off entirely, though. When you read this book aloud, what section do you read?
It's funny you say that. There's a scene when they first when they're at this winter resort on the snowy cabin resort, where they're really starting to be honest with themselves and honest with each other, and in their real short chapters as I bounce back and forth between Benedict and Penelope, and so I tend to read that because it kind of. First of all, I enjoy their internal banter with themselves as they kind of struggle with both that they realize they're connecting to this other person that they thought they would never connect to, and then their physical their realizing their physical attraction to them. So it's fun.
Well, can we get you to read like a little, just a little,
a tiny
smidgen?
Sure, you
of
didn't.
the
You
book.
didn't even. You
Just
didn't even. Well,
Just
should I?
a little bitty bit. It can be any part you want, but just like a page, just to give us a taste.
All right. Well, now I feel pressure to find that spot.
Yeah. See, now I didn't prep that for you. I like, by the way, the fact that the chapter beginnings sometimes their full names, and then sometimes it's just
it's supposed to represent as they're kind of deconstructing themselves and then building themselves back
I like
up.
that.
Yes. Okay, so this is Benedict. Even before my sister said, "Benedict, you don't ask that," I knew I shouldn't have asked her about her scar. Evil Benny, who had been dormant for some time, screamed with glee, "You're such an idiot." The old me and the new me had been debating very intensely on what to say. Both old and new knew that I had to say something, but while the new me insisted I ask something meaningless, such as, "Is this your first time at Wild Wolf Resort?" the old me insisted that asking meaningless questions don't benefit anyone. It would be disingenuous to ask such a question, and I do not care about the answer to, even if the asking of the question made the person comfortable in my presence. The new me said that's exactly what I needed to do, but the old me had been curious for years as to the origin of that very distinctive scar, and I think I had been concentrating so intently why I needed to continue to believe Penelope wasn't attractive, that scar had become the focal point to concentrate on my lack of attraction.
Very nice. Thank you so much. So one more time, The Nerdy and the Dirty. And I never mentioned the page number count, but some people like to hear that. So it's 292 pages, in case you were curious about that. If you guys would like it signed, you still have a chance. We have a little button down on the screen here. You can press that. You can get it signed right now. You can order your very own copy. And I'd like to thank the good folks at Henry Holt for allowing you to speak to us today.
Thank you.
It's very good. Be sure that you guys come back for all our upcoming Author's Voice programs. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and thank you to the Lincoln Bookshop. You guys are awesome. I'm a little nerding out on all the Lincoln stuff here.
Nice. It's pretty awesome.
It's pretty awesome.
It's pretty good. Yeah, I like it a lot too.
Yeah.
All
Awesome.
right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.